we need a privacy policy to start off this presentation, because anything that includes, any service that includes a big data aspect really should have a privacy policy. So give it another click. First, I will listen into your conversations as I'm wandering around the room. Go ahead. I'll take mental note of who you're talking to. I'll store your business cards on my desktop, which is only lightly secured. I may take your business card and refer another person to you if I think that's appropriate. I may contact you on LinkedIn. I may call you. This is a tech meetup, so I'm pretty sure most of you guys are familiar with this one already. All right. And I will not provide a capability for you to download the information that I gather about you. This is about data portability, and it's an upcoming conversation that we're going to start having in a lot of different places. So go ahead. DataBanker. This is what DataBanker is. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look at the slide while I do this because they're very wordy. I want to make sure I capture everything. It's a personal marketplace, personal data marketplace based on a board of trade. And I'll explain all of the aspects of that as we go through some of the other slides. But it primarily is a method for consumers to benefit from and control the release of their data. It's a monetization engine for the Internet of Things. It's not about immediate sales matchmaking. That's why I brought this book. This book, The Intention Economy, talks about most of the monetization methods that are out there right now for websites, for services, for the Internet of Things, and what it really should be. So Doc Searls, The Intention Economy, check that out. We're compatible with the intention economy, and we have some aspects of some of the stuff that he talks to in there, but we're also an adjunct to it in that we provide a monetization method for the types of practices that he said we should be doing. And it's an early phase startup. We started this, I was part of a team back in 2010 when I joined up, and we went for a while under a different company name. We eventually ran out of funding, but that happened just after we put up a prototype that was up for about 3 months. And I'll show you at least 2 slides from the prototype tonight. We ran out of money. We took the prototype down, and since then we've been trying to get money again. We continue to work some of the issues. We work on the infrastructure design and understanding of what kind of things we need to do to go forward. And one of the more recent things that we've also been doing is trying to figure out smaller starting points that we can use to bootstrap from. Otherwise, DataBanker is a big idea. It's a really big idea. One of my partners called it the first new internet monetization method in at least a decade. So, you know, trying to get started with a big idea like that is a little bit intimidating for a lot of people. So we're trying to downsize it in some ways so that we can still build up to the big idea. Sorry, go ahead. All right, you're going to ask what kind of data. We're talking about personal behavior, what you do, the products you do it with, and the environment you do it in. That information is very important to people doing brand research, product research, figure out, somebody who's trying to figure out how many repairs for lawnmowers they're going to have over the next 10 years in this particular area wants to know how people are really using those lawnmowers. So maybe they can stock certain parts. If the environment in that area is very hot or very cold or very humid, maybe they can predict certain repairs and stock up more on things there. They can be more proactive in what they're doing. Again, we're not about the immediate sale. We found that that gives us an economic advantage and a scalability advantage too in many ways. It's going to be multi-cohort. We're looking for any data that you put out. In our pilot, we had we found that telephone data, call detail records, were very popular. In a pilot that had about 200 people join up, mostly friends and family and other influencers, like Doc Searls was one of the people that signed up for it. We got over 1 million call detail records very quickly. This stuff just builds up like that. But in addition to that, we also had electricity records. We had oil records. I do a lot of diving offshore in New Jersey, so I had my dive logs listed into it. You know, anything that a computer will gather and can be downloaded or transferred to somebody else is potentially data that we would want. Sorry, go back again. Okay, Machine to machine is important. It's important for accuracy. We don't want people entering in data when we can gather it automatically. Accuracy is one aspect of that. It makes the data more valuable, but ease of use is another big aspect of that. Demographics and poll data are human-entered data. So yes, we will collect demographics about you. We will correlate it with other information that we get about you from your phone bills and other things to make sure the accuracy is as high as we can get. But we also had a mechanism in there for saying, how do you feel about this? And allow you to enter that data. We will probably, that data is not intended to be as accurate, and it will be noted as less accurate when somebody goes to buy it. And lastly, longitudinal record. That means I've got a history about you. The history samples things at specified intervals, hopefully, because regular intervals are a lot easier to use in calculations and trends. I don't know how many of you here have done any spectrum analysis, but trying to do a Fourier transform on something that has irregular sampling intervals is just a real pain in the ass, and you have to filter it first and do a lot of interpolation. So we're going to try to make it easy, too, for the people that are doing the data analysis. I'm going to concentrate on the top two bubbles on here, the consumer and the enterprise. You can look at some of the other ones, too, and ask me questions later if you want. But currently, there's a lot of issues with what's being done with data right now, personal data. For the consumer, there's a constant fear of identity theft. Is somebody going to get something that I have right now that's going to hurt me financially, especially? Consumers, a lot of them want to share. There are websites like 23andMe, privacy, or sorry, what was it, 23andMe, and there was another health-related site. Sorry, I'm blanking out on it right now. But where people post very intimate details about their health. And they're trying to get some kind of benefit from that. So if the benefit is big enough, a lot of people will just put it all out there for everybody else to see and hope that something comes back that they can benefit from. So that part is there too, and you need to enable that when you have the opportunity and when somebody feels like doing that. Consumers want to control their own data. Your data right now is being paid for, or sorry, it's being traded for the services that you get on the internet for free, primarily. It's being traded in other ways too, discounts at the grocery store, et cetera. But then those people take that data and they sell it off to somebody else. And they sell it off to somebody else. And it can be re-aggregated and correlated and filtered multiple times, and you're not getting anything from those follow-on data sales. You know, is that fair? Is that initial service that you get or initial product discount that you get really of sufficient value to compensate for your data being out there all over the place? Hard to say, because there is no real marketplace for data right now. It's a very closed marketplace, very difficult to understand what's really going on. And for enterprises, a lot of enterprises are controllers of data. They may say that they're owners of the data, but we feel that they're more controllers and that you're the rightful owner of data that you generate. So let's say AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, the telecoms are a great example of that. They have regulatory hurdles that they would have to overcome if they were going to try to sell your data. Utilities, transportation, and medical, health-related stuff are very similar in similar straits. They've got a lot of data about you already. They occasionally try to sell it off. They say that they anonymize it, but because anonymization is a statistical process, you can never completely anonymize anything. And usually the anonymization methods that they use are pretty poor. So they try to anonymize the data, and it gets out there, and the public has a big backlash, and they put the data back undercover again, and then in about 6 months, when everybody forgets about that, they try it again. You can see it happening time and again at AT&T and Verizon. So how can they unlock the value of that data? What if they went to you and said, can we sell this data of yours? And you said, well, what are you going to give me for it? They say, well, how about some product discounts or a couple of bucks a month or something like that? And you can start negotiating with them then. We're hoping to enable that. The enterprises that hold that data are at risk of litigation if their security breaks down and the data gets out. And there's no real incentive to engage with the consumer. They think they know everything about you by looking at the data that you put out. But in a lot of cases, that's inaccurate because somebody else used your phone, they recorded the data inaccurately. You know, sometimes you're just messing with them, and you put out the inaccurate data yourself. I do that a lot. Can you go on to the next one? All right, so DataBanker is going to try to solve some of this. We're giving consumers control of their personal data. There is a social aspect to this, too. I have my data, somebody else has their data. We decide we're in a group. We're going to do certain things with our pooled data together and take a look at it. So we'll get into that a little bit more, too. Life improvement. I want to understand what my data is telling other people so that I can use it to tell something about myself and maybe improve my own life in some way. And direct compensation. Direct compensation is a big part of our model. The fact that we transform data to cash right at that end where the marketer buys it, and then it stays as cash throughout our system as we move splits around, et cetera. We can transform that cash into something else. We can transform it into product points or mojo points or whatever you want, but really you need to start thinking of it as cash. And that starts making the transforming the conversation of how other people are using your data as well. For enterprises, we're hoping that they'll be able to get some new product features out of this. We have a heavy analytical set of features that we want to bring to people. And because we're converting data to cash, we can split off little bits of that cash in different ways so that you can get the analytics that big businesses are using right now on your data. So if we give that back to the enterprise and we give them a portal on our website that the enterprise says, this data that we're collecting about you is telling us this about you, and here, we thought you'd like to see it. That's a new feature for them. All right, we have certain privacy features too that are also pretty cool, and we are interested in licensing. Eliminates negative PR. This is a socially responsible thing to do. I've been talking to one telecom company, Republic Wireless. Is anybody here familiar with that? Yeah, Republic Wireless has a $20 a month cell phone plan. You have to buy the phone yourself, and it's not a new phone by any means, but it's $20 a month. And they feel like they want to create a really consumer-oriented model, and they're going to focus on what the consumer needs and what their wants are. And price was a big factor, but they thought that our service really matches up pretty well to the kind of thing that they're trying to do. And limits financial liability and risk. You as a consumer are giving them permission to use this data in certain ways, and that data does have an outlet. It decreases the pressure for it to flow into other unauthorized outlets. You go to the next one. All right, consumer authorized and validated data means that the data is going to be of better quality than what's out there right now. Also avoids privacy backlash and regulatory issues. Again, regulatory issues like HIPAA say that my health information should not go anywhere. Well, I say I want it to go there. And that provides an end around that regulation and one that benefits you. Instrumented product usage data. Again, actual data versus anecdotal makes data much more accurate. We get contextual metadata from the consumer. So data comes into our system. We first normalize it. What kind of data is this? Is this heart rate? Is it miles per hour? Is it hertz? Something per second. Okay, so that's the first normalization step. The second one is, and what was I doing when this was being generated? Heart rate in a medical situation is very different from heart rate in an exercise situation. It's different both in value and in sensitivity levels. If I were to release my heart rate in an exercise situation, all right, I might do that within a certain group of friends if we're competing and trying to show each other that maybe we were out on a run or a bike ride on a certain night. But I don't want to release any of my medical heart rate information to anybody except people who have to have it, or somebody else I decides has a good enough reason to do it. So different sensitivity levels, different context, but it's the same measurement. We have a taxonomy of those types of measurements. So for example, location is a great one. I can get location from your cell phone, from your GPS system that you carry with you, from your car GPS system. I can get it from your camera. I can get it from your iPad, the networks that you connect up to. I can get location from all kinds of different things, but it's still location. And I want to be able to sell that location or analyze that location as location. The longitudinal view, I already talked about a little bit. Okay, real-time analytics and self-serve reports. In the market research business, self-serve reports has become somewhat important, and real-time analytics on a big database is something that a lot of companies are doing right now. So Procter & Gamble would be a great example. They've got all these sales information coming in, they've got polls coming in and consumer feedback coming in, and they're monitoring that in real time. Similar to the way that a lot of places monitor stock prices and stock trades, try to figure out what's going on right now, what the trends are, the instantaneous trends, how can I take advantage of that? We expect that to be happening on our data platform too. So we will allow analytical routines to run on our service platform and be able to generate these types of reports. We think that that's going to be a very high value service. Okay, could you go to the next one? For our data partners, we unlock the value of these data silos that they have already. Data portability requirements is also something that's coming along. In the EU, it's been proposed. I don't think it's been required to be implemented yet, but if you're collecting data about me, I've got to be able to download it. You hear about Facebook and Google having to provide something like tens of CDs in order to give somebody their data. That's as a result of rules like this. California has also been looking at a rule like this. So one of the big questions we have is, why would AT&T give you guys the data that they think that they own? Well, one of the reasons is because the government tells them they have to. And if they have to do it anyway, why don't they want to make some money off of it and get the positive customer perception of being trying to get engaged? Well, let me see how to word this. It will, working with our service, we expect will have a positive customer feedback. It'll be viewed positively by a bunch of people because we take care of their privacy, because we give them a lot of the monetary rewards from that data. It's really putting them in control, and they feel good about that. It is a monetization engine for the Internet of Things. People building all of these little devices, tying them out to networks, how are they going to make money? Each little device costs a certain amount to build. If you try to put it into a residential situation or into a hobbyist's hands, they're going to be very price conscious. What can you do to try to give a few more points of profit off of that? Sell the data to us. It'll be done in that consumer's name because the consumer owns the data, but they'll be able to pull off, it's like an affiliate share of the money stream. So 10, 15, 20%, something on that range, they can be pulling out of the data sales that they help to contribute to. And lastly, an ecosystem of developers, people who develop apps, people who develop websites, people who develop the monitoring consoles for this Internet of Things are going to be able to take part in that affiliate type data stream as well. Oh, there's another thing down here too. The API with privacy management. We will have, of course, data transfer APIs and other ways to specify data sets, but there's a big part of it is going to be about privacy. When somebody transmits data to us, we want it to be pre-filtered. There are certain data elements we just don't want. We don't want in our system anywhere. They provide no value, or their sensitivity level is just too high. So one of the rules that we have is that we're going to strip off the last 4 digits of any serial number, even including vehicle VIN codes. We're going to strip off the last 4 digits of any phone numbers that come into our system. We don't need them. They don't have value. They just put everybody at risk. So there are other rules too, that other rules and recommendations that our developers will pay attention to, and they can use our privacy APIs to help discover additional things or to specify exactly what they're doing. Okay, go ahead. Whoops. Data visualization is very big. Business intelligence tools right now are getting very sophisticated. I've installed a few at a couple of companies, and I see the types of things that they're doing with them. What if people that create these data visualization tools were creating them for you to use, you and a social group that you were interested in sharing this information with? And that would provide a lot of feedback that would be of interest to people. There is no way to monetize that very easily right now. You and a group could go together and say, well, we're going to try to buy this package, or we're going to take that open source package and we're all going to develop on it, and usually that peters out before it gets anywhere. But this is a monetization method that they can tie into that we believe will allow a lot of these types of applications to be put together. Data portfolio. I'm sorry. One of the aspects under the data visualization is that you can create different privacy ratings or different privacy settings for each of the groups that you belong to. There's nothing that says that you have only one privacy thing. For example, your location. You could say, I only want my zip code to be shown. No further resolution to anybody. Okay, we can follow that. And then you say, but for this group, hey, let's put it down to 100 yards. Okay, we can do that too. A data portfolio and privacy policy will give you guided risk management. We know how most people feel about the sensitivity of certain data elements. And we can say, this is where you're at. And if you release more information here, if you change the resolution of this one, here's the effect it's going to have on how we feel your privacy risk is happening right now. Oh, by the way, the only data that gets into our system is data that you approved. It's completely opt-in. So you don't want some data to come into our system, it's not going to be there. We do have a privacy risk score that has a patent application. It's something that I developed that we think is pretty cool. I think it's pretty cool. And it also supports data portability. Once it's into our system, you can get it out again. You can delete the data that you have in our system. You can tell us not to use this again. And it allows you to establish claims for your data. And this is going to be a big issue in coming legal battles. Who really owns that data? AT&T for a while said that if you download your phone records, your bills, or an Excel spreadsheet of your call detail records from our website, you can use it for these specific purposes and nothing more. One of those purposes that you could not use it for was to give it to any third party who would make money by analyzing that data for you. So think about that. A business will hire in or bring in a consultant to optimize their communications billing structure. That is something that happens very regularly, and it provides a lot of savings for a lot of people. You as an individual, AT&T was saying, no, you can't do that. We had a couple of lawyers that said, man, I would love to take that case. We think we have a strong claim there, and we think we can win it very quickly. Can you go to the next one? So, to somewhat summarize, data marketers sell opportunity and access. This is the person. They have this interest. They sell in taxonomies that are both financial and demographic. And they sell intent. Somebody is indicated, or we think, that they want to buy this thing right now. And here's the person, here's how you contact them. So it leads to sneaky ads. And it's called leads. It's the state of the internet right now. It leads to creepy stuff. As opposed to our model, we give you validated behavior, informed consent and authorization, and personalized data and profile privacy. Again, being able to set things, include only the data that you want, and set the privacy levels in many different ways. And we're targeting market strategy and business intelligence, which have longer term value. Immediate intent can go away once I buy something. But what I've been doing over the last 5 years in terms of buying products and how do I use them and what environments do I use them in, and is it really me using them or have I sold it to somebody? That has a lot of long-term value to it. You go ahead. All right, I wanted to get into a little bit of some of the privacy stuff that we've worked out. Privacy metrics are a big part of this. Our patent is on the first real-world privacy metric that can be applied to this type of a service, a website, really anything that deals with data and personal profiles. So there's single item sensitivity, heartbeat. I'm this sensitive about releasing that information, or an address. That address identifies me to this type of resolution or this type of statistical meaning. There's 4 people living in my house. This address would identify me to 25% probability. And then there's combinatorial factors. When you start adding these things together, how do they start matching up against each other? By putting all of these items that we're going to be gathering into a taxonomy and understanding how the different elements of that taxonomy, how they relate to each other, and which ones really are very similar in meaning versus which ones are very different and provide a complementary view. What's the overlap there? Our algorithm takes a lot of that into account. So 5 union 1. 5 is the sensitivity level in this. 5 is a high sensitivity. I don't really want this data to be released unless I get high value back for it. 1, very low sensitivity, or very low power to identify me. So 5 union 1 might give me a factor of 5.06. But then as you start adding in additional factors in there, we get a really interesting thing happening in our algorithm. And at first I wondered if this was right. It didn't seem right that the more information I give to you, the lower my privacy risk might become. But if you start thinking about it in the real world, there's such a thing as hiding in plain sight. The more things you gather around you that are kind of like you, the less somebody's going to be able to find you. I went to Rutgers and gave a presentation about a year and a half ago, and I gave first kid in the classroom who could identify where I live got $5. My name is Dwight Irving. It's fairly unique, and they knew I was in New Jersey and so on, so within 30 seconds somebody figured out where my home was. But my partner, Tom Wilson, that's a completely different matter. Try to find a Tom Wilson and an identity location where he lives, and he's hiding in plain sight. A lot of the privacy research that goes on assumes you have unlimited resources. Unlimited resources is not a real-world assumption. How many people do a Google search and actually go beyond the first page? All right, you know, quite a few of us in the room I think probably would, but how many of us would go beyond the 8th page? You can hide in today's world still. So, as I start adding in lower value items into that combinatorial calculation, my privacy can actually increase, or my privacy risk goes down. Can you go to the next one? So what we found out that we were really answering is, once you know the worst thing about me, how much worse can it get? The answer is a little bit worse. For instance, you're going to court for a murder, and somebody finds out along the way that you sideswiped another car and you just ran off. The judge is going to hold you just a little bit worse in contempt for that. So, go ahead. So because these outliers, the worst thing about me, is so important in our calculation, we started calling it our one goat theorem. One goat relates to an old Scottish joke about an American traveling through Scotland, meeting up with a Scotsman in a bar, and we'll talk about it later over beers. But the idea is that once you know the worst thing about me, how much worse can it get? Okay, go ahead. These are the privacy controls we had on the prototype. And you'll see that this is a call detail record. This particularly is Verizon. Over there it says Verizon second party, who was being called. And you can see right away that we blanked out the last 4 digits. This one, we have a resolution slider over here. In this case, we had 3 different resolution values that you could select from. We could have set 5, but we found that 3 was adequate for this type of a data element. So the first one, index only, means the stuff, all of the data that would be used, if you set it over to that, your data would only be used in highly aggregated indexes. So something like the Dow Jones 500 index would be spit out. You know, how many cell phone users were driving this month? You'd be in there. Very hard to identify you from that kind of a data element. As you slide it over, that middle position would say, I'm going to give you the area code. So the area code tells you a little bit about location. Next slider, full resolution, says area code plus exchange, and that tells you a bit more about location. And then we don't go any further than that because it's pretty meaningless unless I just want to identify you. Okay, we do have different numbers of resolution elements for different types of data. You can see that there. In the next one, Verizon rate was off-peak. It's either off-peak or on-peak, so there's only two levels on that one. You either tell me the data or you aggregate it very heavily, and so on down there. Now, as you look up on the top, you see that graph as it goes across that says privacy disclosure less and more. This is single factor privacy or small numbers of combinatorial elements. So a call detail record is going to have all of those elements, but they're still very highly correlated. They're not telling me a lot of different views of this person. It's a very minor view of this person. So we're treating it more or less as a single element in there and not taking into account too much the combinatorial factors. And because it's tough to tell from smaller numbers of elements what the real risk is, we just give you a graphic up there that's kind of indicative of it. Go to the next one. All right, now you see over on the left side, my privacy score. It's 996. This is meant to look a lot like a credit score. So something from 1 to 1,000, where the higher number you go, in the case of a credit score, it's better credit. In the case of a privacy score, it's less privacy risk. Less information probably being disclosed. to a general population. I need to specify that too. This is somebody with average set of resources. The NSA could find you from a lot of this data. AT&T, if I put my AT&T bill onto this network and AT&T starts buying those reports, they'd be able to find you very quickly from that data. If you put on here that you have a tattoo in a certain location, your wife or girlfriend would be able to find you very quickly in this data, but the average person would not be able to do it. So do you have a shared secret with somebody that you don't want to show up if they buy a report? Don't put it on the system. But if you don't have shared secrets with anybody, if you just have general stuff and you're worried about the general population, then this number will give you a fairly good indication of it. We also have the profile. You see over there, age, zip code, gender were 3 of the profile elements that we took. That was demographic, that was user entered, and we treat it just like any other data source, except we know it's probably going to be less accurate. And you can also set the privacy sliders there. So in the case of age, different resolution would be, are you above 13? Are you above 21? Or what decade are you in? Those would all be different examples of resolution that we might want to put onto that.